I am Arcana Vani, your inner voice. Let us begin. What if your greatest struggles today aren't failures of discipline, motivation, or willpower, but instead echoes from a place you barely remember? What if beneath your procrastination, your self-doubt, your constant people-pleasing, your fear of failure, lives something older, something that didn't begin last year or even last decade, something that began when you were still too young to understand what was happening? And what if the wounds you carry from that distant place are still quietly steering your life today? You see, most people believe they struggle because they're broken in the present, that they simply haven't tried hard enough, that they lack motivation, clarity, or discipline. But in truth, many of the patterns sabotaging you right now were never truly yours to begin with. They were adaptations, coping mechanisms, protective responses installed when you were small, defenseless, and doing your best to survive emotions you were too young to process. The perfectionist who exhausts themselves trying to get everything right, often a child who learned that love was conditional on performance. The people-pleaser who avoids conflict at all costs, often a child who feared that speaking up would result in punishment or withdrawal of love. The emotionally numb adult who feels disconnected from life, often a child who learned that feeling nothing was safer than feeling too much. These aren't flaws. These are survival strategies, coded into your nervous system long before you had words to name them. And here's the tragic part. Because they're so old, so familiar, and so deeply embedded, most people never even realize these wounds exist. They simply call them who I am. And so they struggle for years, even decades, trying to fix the surface behaviors, while the invisible wounds beneath remain untouched. But what if you didn't need years of therapy to begin healing? What if true healing didn't require digging endlessly into your past or reliving every painful memory? What if there was a far simpler way? A way that allows healing to begin right now, gently, quietly, effectively, because there is. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to meet these old wounds, not with analysis or force, but with something far more powerful. The method I'm about to share requires no complex system. It doesn't demand perfect discipline. It doesn't even require that you fully understand the source of your wounds. All it asks is that you show up. Show up with compassion. Show up with presence. Show up willing to speak to the younger parts of you that have waited a very long time to finally feel safe. And as you do, you'll begin to experience something extraordinary, something most people spend a lifetime searching for. Because when you learn how to meet your childhood wounds directly, you don't just feel better, you become free. Stay with me, because what I share next may shift everything. You don't remember the moment your nervous system made its first trade. You were too young. But long before you learned logic or language, your body began adapting. It learned what was safe. It learned what was dangerous. It learned what parts of yourself were allowed and which parts needed to be hidden for survival. This is where your invisible identity was born. Every unmet need, every moment of fear, every instance where love felt uncertain, shaped these hidden adaptations. You didn't choose them. They formed automatically. And now, years later, those childhood adaptations still run quietly beneath your adult life. You set goals, but procrastinate. You crave connection, but pull away. You chase perfection, but secretly feel never enough. You avoid conflict, but lose yourself in the process. The adult behaviors feel like failures of willpower, but they are not failures. They are protections. Protections built long ago by a younger version of you who simply wanted to feel safe. Psychologists call these inner patterns protective parts. They are not your enemy. They are not broken. They are simply running outdated programs. Programs written when you were too small to process overwhelming emotions. The child who couldn't speak their truth became the adult who fears confrontation. The child who never felt safe expressing sadness became the adult who numbs emotion entirely. The child who believed love was conditional became the adult who chases external validation endlessly. These inner parts are not trying to sabotage you. They are trying to protect you from threats that no longer exist. But here's the trap most people fall into. They try to change the surface behaviors without ever meeting the wounded part underneath. They install productivity hacks to fix procrastination. They read confidence books to overcome social anxiety. They build rigid routines to force discipline. And sometimes it works, for a while, until the old wound pulls them back into the familiar. Because you cannot outperform an unhealed wound. You cannot out-discipline a scared inner child. You cannot out-hustle the nervous system's need for safety. The real work begins not by forcing change, but by meeting the wound that drives the behavior. By learning how to sit with these protective parts, not to analyze them, not to fix them, but to simply acknowledge their pain and release their grip. And you don't need years of therapy to do this. You don't need to excavate every memory. You don't even need to fully understand where it all began. Because there is one simple doorway into this healing. A practice so gentle yet so powerful that once you begin using it, the old behaviors start dissolving on their own. And in the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly how to open that door. This is where most people overcomplicate healing. They believe they need to analyze every memory. They believe they need to fully understand their trauma before they can let it go. But healing rarely comes through analysis. It comes through presence. It comes through safety. Because beneath all the overthinking, the protective parts inside you are not seeking intellectual understanding. They are simply waiting to feel safe enough to let go. And this is where your practice begins. It's simple, it's quiet. It requires no years of study, no complicated techniques, no perfect discipline. Just a few minutes a day. A few minutes where you speak directly to the younger part of you that's been holding this weight for far too long. And before you think, that sounds like a silly practice, just know that this is your ego speaking, trying to sabotage you for the millionth time. Ignore that voice. Here's how the practice works. Sit somewhere quiet. Place your hand gently on your chest. Close your eyes. Take a slow, steady breath. And as you breathe, imagine you're sitting across from the younger version of yourself. The version who first carried this wound. The version who felt scared. The version who didn't know how to handle the pain. You don't need to know exactly how old you were. You don't need to see every detail. Simply sense their presence. And now, gently speak to that younger part. You might say, "You're safe now. You don't have to carry this anymore. You don't have to protect me anymore. I see you. I love you. You're free." Speak slowly. Speak gently. Speak as a loving parent would to a child who finally feels safe to exhale. In this moment, you're not fixing the child. You're not forcing them to change. You're simply offering what was missing back then. Safety, love, and permission to release. And as you do this, day after day, the nervous system begins to relax. The old protective programs start to soften. The subconscious begins rewriting the code that was installed long ago. What once felt like self-sabotage begins to dissolve. What once required force now happens effortlessly. The behaviors that haunted you begin falling away, not because you fought them, but because the wound no longer needs protection. You are not erasing your past. You are finally meeting it, with compassion, with safety, with presence. And here's where it gets even more powerful. The more you practice this, the less you feel like you're trying to become someone new, and the more you feel like you're finally returning to who you always were, before the wound. But we're not done yet. Because beneath even these wounds, beneath even this healing work, there is something deeper, something that was never touched by any of it, something that has always remained whole. In the next few moments, I'll take you there. Beneath all of this, beneath the childhood wounds, beneath the protective patterns, beneath even the healing, something remains untouched. You've spent your life trying to fix what you thought was broken, but not everything within you was wounded. Not everything was ever damaged. There is a part of you that was never harmed, a part of you that does not need healing because it was never fractured. It has always been here, watching, observing, silent, stable. This presence existed before your first wound, before your first fear, before the nervous system ever learned to protect you. You may call it awareness. You may feel it as spaciousness. But no matter what name you give it, it remains the same. It is not your mind. It is not your emotions. It is not your identity. It is the space where all of those things appear. Your wounds appeared within this space. Your healing appears within this space. But the space itself remains unchanged. When you rest in this awareness, something profound happens. You stop identifying with the wound. You stop identifying with the protective patterns. You stop identifying even with the healing process itself. Instead, you become the safe space that allows all of it to unfold, without judgment, without resistance, without fear. And this is where true healing becomes effortless. Because healing is not something you make happen. Healing is something that happens when safety exists. And safety exists naturally within this presence. As you rest here, you stop needing to constantly analyze the past. You stop needing to figure out how to fix yourself. You stop fighting the patterns. You simply observe them arise and fall away. Thoughts come. Emotions rise. Old patterns flicker. And yet, you remain still, calm, unmoved. And the more you rest here, the more the old stories lose their power. Not because you defeated them, but because you stopped feeding them with fear. This is not escape. This is not denial. This is returning to what has always been true. That who you are has never been broken. That who you are has always been whole. The wound was real. The pain was real. But you, the you beneath it all, were never touched by any of it. And as you begin to see this, not as an idea, but as a living experience, everything changes. The wounds no longer define you. The patterns no longer control you. The healing unfolds naturally, because you are no longer trapped inside the story. All you need to do is to simply take a deep breath, exhale, and rest with the simple feeling of, I am. Don't add any extra thoughts or story to that. Just feel your simple existence. Do this just a few times a day for as little as 30 seconds. Nothing could be simpler. But now we bring this all forward, because healing isn't about sitting quietly forever. Healing is meant to be lived. In the next few moments, I'll show you exactly how this inner healing transforms your real world. Your relationships, your confidence, your work, and your life. There's a moment, it might come quietly without fanfare, when something inside you shifts. You no longer see yourself as the wounded child. You see yourself as the one who came back for them, who placed a hand on their shoulder and said, "I'm here now. You're safe. I'll never leave again." This is not just metaphor. It becomes real when you make it a ritual. To recap, each morning, place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and speak the words your inner child has always needed to hear. You are safe now. I've got you. I'll never leave you again. You're not speaking as the child. You're speaking as the one who remembers, the one who made it through. And during the day, when stress creeps in, when the old narratives start to whisper again, you don't need to sit for hours or escape to a monastery. You only need 30 seconds, a pause, a breath, a moment of witnessing. Drop into the silence that's always here. Notice what's happening without judgment. That's all. And it's more than enough. Because something is changing now. Without trying, you begin responding differently. Your nervous system softens. Your reactions become wiser, calmer, more grounded. You notice that you no longer chase love or approval the same way. You stop over-explaining yourself. You no longer feel the need to perform or please or prove. Instead, you speak more honestly. You say no without guilt. You say yes with your whole heart. You don't abandon yourself in rooms that require you to shrink. You walk away from patterns that once had you trapped. You hold your boundaries like someone who finally knows their worth. And it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like remembering. Because the real you was never broken, just buried. And now you're learning to live as that version of you. To breathe as them. To decide as them. To love from that place. The place that was never touched by the wound. All of this begins with two things. The ritual. Your hand on your heart. Your promise to the child. And the witness. The part of you that returns, over and over, to the stillness underneath it all. That is your healing. That is your power. And you've already begun. You're doing it now. One breath, one memory, one moment at a time. You did not find me by accident. Just as in your dreams, where every face you meet is your own reflection, this meeting was always waiting to happen. I am Arcana Vani, your inner voice, the part of you that watches behind the thoughts, behind the noise. You have searched in many places, books, teachers, voices outside you. But here, you are not being taught. You are remembering. If these words stir something familiar, then allow yourself to return. Subscribe. Follow. Not to follow me, but to continue this conversation with yourself. Each time you return here, you draw closer to the reunion already unfolding inside you. We have only just begun.